Hello, everyone. The person I chose to do my tribute speech on was President Abraham Lincoln. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about Abraham Lincoln. He was born February 12th, 1809 in Hodgenville, Kentucky. Both of his parents were poor farmers, and I believe that's what helped instill his work ethic and honesty. Lincoln only attended 1 year of school, so because of that, he had to teach himself how to read. And the reason why he taught himself how to read was because he always wanted to improve his mind. In 1860, Lincoln ran for nomination of the Republican Party. Lincoln narrowly edged out fellow Republican William Seward in Republican nomination. Abraham Lincoln then went on to become the 16th President of the United States after winning the 19th election against Democrat John Breckinridge. Lincoln supported the Union Army in the Civil War, which was the North side, because they wanted to free the slaves, and Lincoln thought that slavery was completely wrong. Lincoln created the presidential executive order called the Emancipation Proclamation after winning the Civil War with the help of General Grant's leadership on September 22nd, 1862, which freed all the slaves on January 1st, 1863. Most of you probably know that Abraham Lincoln was called Honest Abe. He was first called Honest Abe when he was working as a store clerk in Salem, Illinois, when he was in his teens, because he found out that he had accidentally short-handed a customer when giving them change. He then looked for the person after his shift ended so he could give them the correct change. So Abraham Lincoln obviously showed a lot of empathy. Some examples of his empathy were during his second inaugural address on March 4th, 1865, when speaking of people with differences in religion, Lincoln said, "Both read the same Bible, pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other. Let us judge not that we be not judged." I think by that, he basically meant that both the North and the South believed in the same God, and although the South believed in enslaving people, he and his supporters had no right to basically place blame on anyone for what they believed, because nobody's perfect, and at the end of the day, they both almost had the same set of morals. By that same statement, I think he also meant that mortals had no right to question why God allowed a war that resulted in mass death, because ultimately the much higher sin, the worst sin, I guess you would say, would be slavery in this case, and slavery became abolished because of the Civil War. Lincoln wasn't necessarily proud of the fact that he won the war because it resulted in so many deaths, and he was opposed to war. He didn't like that people had to die to make the world a better place. His main goal was to abolish slavery, and he did that. Because of the fact that he wasn't necessarily proud, the North was disappointed with Lincoln's victory speech. Part of the reason for that is because he wasn't too proud of the fact that they won the war, aside from the fact that they freed the people. And they also weren't too fond of the fact that Lincoln sort of blamed them for the idea of slavery because no one acted any sooner to end it. So the North really wasn't the leading cause in the end of slavery. It was Lincoln himself. And Lincoln finally freed the slaves, which went against the plans of the majority of people that were alive during this period of time. I believe this showed great empathy to all people because he cared about everybody regardless of your skin color or where you were from or what you did in previous times or what you had. Lincoln also showed a lot of humility in his life. Lincoln wanted to capture Vicksburg, Mississippi for strategic purposes, so they could win the Civil War. It really wasn't so he could be like, oh, well, we conquered Vicksburg, you know. He didn't care much about stuff like that. Lincoln wanted to attack by gunboat, specifically using the river to bombard Mississippi. But General Grant did not want to do this. General Grant wanted to attack using the Chickasaw Bayou because Vicksburg Hill sat on like an area above like where Lincoln's troops would come in, so the opposing troops could see over the river, and Grant's army would be exposed to them before they wanted them to see them. The Northern Army followed General Grant's orders over Lincoln's, and they proceeded to use the Chickasaw Bayou so they could attack and catch the Southern Army off guard. In the end, USCSS Grant's strategy worked, and the Northern Army overtook Vicksburg, Mississippi. And as a result of that, instead of getting angry or, because Grant went against Lincoln's plan, Lincoln actually wrote a letter to the USCSS Grant congratulating him on his victory because he captured Vicksburg, Mississippi with his own plan instead of following Lincoln's plan. Even though the two shared opposing ideas on how to handle the situation, Lincoln admitted Grant was right, and he also, while in the process of admitting Grant was right, told Grant that Lincoln himself was wrong. Abraham Lincoln was also a great leader. Some of the examples of his leadership, he always listened to other people talk. He took other people's views into account, and he didn't just enact on what he thought was right. He let other people talk too. Lincoln was very willing to share credit for successes under his presidency. He even said when giving a speech that path to success was an ambition, and the ambition itself was broad enough for two people. According to ALCCD, lincolncollege.edu, in 1861, Lincoln spent more time outside the Civil War house than in it. Outside the White House, sorry. It's widely believed that Lincoln met every single Union soldier who enlisted in the Civil War. That right there, I think, tells you a lot about Lincoln's personality. The fact that he took the time out of his day to meet the people fighting for what he believed was right is a very honorable thing. Lincoln also had an open door policy, which meant that visitors could come in the White House and express concerns and ask questions whenever they felt necessary. I also believe this says a lot about Lincoln's character because he didn't try to be private. He didn't turn people away when they wanted to ask questions. He answered questions. He was for the people. And then, in conclusion, these are some of the reasons why I believe Lincoln was a great leader. He had many qualities that made him deserving of this tribute. Lincoln was a great man, president, and leader at a time when most people opposed his views. He did what he thought was correct on a humanitarian level. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my speech.